3 seconds. That's all it took for Cheryl Knox to decide that Elias Reed didn't belong in Altura Airlines' first-class lounge. The perfectly tailored suit and his calm, composed walk meant nothing to her. The only thing she saw was his skin. Security, Cheryl whispered, her eyes narrowing with a habit formed over years of purposeful suspicion. What she didn't know or couldn't see was that the man before her was one of the brightest minds in the world. He had built the multi-billion-dollar Reed core tech empire from scratch. He had helped safeguard the nation with pioneering AI systems. A man who could change an entire system with just a phone call. But she didn't see any of that. She only saw a black man. Elias didn't say a word as two security officers approached. He didn't resist or show any surprise. Events like this were nothing new to him. He simply pulled out his phone, gazed straight ahead, and spoke clearly, almost in a whisper. Mira, activate Raven Protocol. Begin surveillance. And in that moment, the fate of Altura Airlines was sealed. They thought they were just escorting a troublesome guest out of the lounge. But in reality, they had just declared war on the man who had spent his entire life preparing for this moment, when discrimination would finally face intellect, strategy, and an unshakable power. No one in the crowd of passengers spoke up. They bowed their heads, looked at their phones, or quickly looked away. The heavy silence of complicity. Only one person, Marcus Hill, a 21-year-old intern standing at the far corner of the check-in counter, was stunned when he realized that the man being escorted away was no stranger. "Oh my God, it's him," Marcus whispered. Elias Reed, the man who had graced the covers of Wired, Forbes, and had been honored by the White House for his contributions to national cybersecurity. Yet today he was being treated like an imposter. The sleek black Bentley rolled through the gates of Liberty International Airport on a cloudy March morning. The car door opened smoothly as the driver stepped out, adjusting his tie like a familiar ritual. "Do you need help with your luggage, Mr. Reed?" James, who had worked for Elias for over 7 years, asked, standing with impeccable posture. "Just the carry-on, James. I've been taking lighter trips lately," Elias said, smoothly pulling his small suitcase off the leather seat. He adjusted his cuff, where the platinum cufflink sparkled, a gift he gave himself after closing his first billion-dollar deal. "Do you need me to pick you up this afternoon from Los Angeles?" James asked. "I'll send the details later. And James—" "Yes, sir? Take the rest of the day off." A small smile appeared on the driver's face. "Thank you, sir." Elias entered the main hall, and, as always, he felt the shift in energy as a black man stepped into a space that history had not reserved for them. A woman clutched her handbag tighter. A security officer stood straighter than usual, a few quick glances, then hurriedly turning away. Elias didn't react. Those moments now felt like background noise, uncomfortable, but a familiar soundtrack to his life. He had learned one thing: reacting only gives power to those who don't deserve it. The first-class check-in line was empty. Elias approached the counter. 2 female attendants were chatting. The younger one, Erica, smiled when she saw him approaching, but the other one, Cheryl Knox, froze. Her gaze lingered longer than necessary. "Good morning," Elias said, presenting his platinum priority boarding pass and ID. "I'm on the 11:30 a.m. Altura Airlines flight to Los Angeles." Cheryl took the documents, her stiff smile not reaching her eyes. "Business trip or leisure, Mr. Reed?" She paused at the word Mr., as if uncertain whether to use it. "Business," Elias replied, his gaze never leaving hers. Cheryl checked the documents with more forceful key presses than necessary. Then she leaned over to Erica, whispering something. Erica's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly returned to her professional demeanor. Elias overheard, "Startup. Probably just luck." He was used to being called a lucky tech kid. It didn't matter. Let them think that. "Here's your boarding pass," Cheryl said, handing back the documents with a reluctant smile. "First-class passengers can use the lounge to the left. Boarding at 10:45? "Thank you," Elias nodded, taking the documents back, his gaze briefly meeting Cheryl's as he turned and walked away. The security process went smoothly until Elias was randomly selected for a secondary check. Just an extra check, Mr. Reed, the TSA agent said. Random. That happened to Elias on almost every flight. He didn't resist, didn't ask why, didn't frown. His expression remained calm. He had learned to swallow the offense without letting it touch his dignity. 20 minutes later, Elias approached the entrance to Altura's first-class lounge. Another agent, Ryan, greeted him with a smile. "Hello, sir. May I see your boarding pass and ID?" Before Elias could pull out his wallet, a familiar voice rang out from behind. "I'll handle this." Cheryl Knox reappeared, breathing heavily as if she had just run over. Ryan stepped back, confused. Elias handed over the documents. Cheryl took them and began inspecting them with unnecessary scrutiny. "Is there a problem?" Elias asked, still maintaining his steady tone. "Just following procedure, sir." Cheryl emphasized the word "sir" again, this time with a hint of disdain. "This first-class ticket seems unusual." "Unusual how?" "This is a very expensive seat. We need to make sure the passenger is in the correct place." The people passing by began to slow their pace. No one spoke, but everyone was watching. "I assure you my ticket is valid," Elias said, his voice now carrying an edge of cold steel beneath it. Cheryl continued checking on the system. Her face tightened. "I suspect this is someone else's ticket, or maybe someone bought it for you." The implication behind her words needed no further explanation. A middle-aged man nearby snorted, "Maybe you've got the wrong spot, buddy. Coach is over there." Cheryl didn't rebut. On the contrary, it seemed to embolden her. "I need to verify further. Please wait a moment." Elias slowly pulled out the rare Centurion black card, a card so exclusive that people only heard rumors about it. "Is this enough?" he asked Cheryl briefly, froze, then quickly regained her composure. "Anyone can have this card. I'll call security." Elias still didn't react. He simply stepped aside, back straight, face as cold as ice. No anger, no pleading, no need for either, just waiting. Elias Reed once believed in simple dreams. As a child sitting huddled by the old window at Elwood House Orphanage, he didn't dream of money or power. He dreamt of a quiet room, a desk, an old computer to take apart and put back together, and some adult willing to listen instead of looking at him as a problem. Elias lost his parents when he was 6, in a car accident on Christmas Eve. The car his mother was driving was hit by a truck at the Bridgeport intersection, a place now marked with a small, discreet granite memorial that reads, "Always Remembered." With no close relatives, Elias became an orphan in the system. He was moved through 4 foster homes in his first 3 years, each placed with promises but also scars. At Elwood, at least he had a corner to sit and read. And a notebook, brown leather cover, frayed spine, where he wrote everything, from circuit diagrams to mathematical models he created when he couldn't sleep at night. The orphanage supervisor, Mrs. Turner, once told a reporter, "That boy never caused trouble, just needed a quiet corner and a pen." At that time, no one knew that the boy with deep, quiet eyes would grow to lay the foundation of the entire national cybersecurity and artificial intelligence system. But that journey didn't start with success. It started with sorrow. When Elias turned 14, he was moved to a temporary foster family in the suburbs of Philadelphia. The Harpers were kind but didn't understand him. When Elias asked for an old computer to assemble, Mr. Harper laughed and said, "Learning plumbing will help you live better, son." So Elias got a part-time job. He cleaned yards, washed cars, knocked on doors in the neighborhood, just to trade for old motherboards and broken power cables. He turned the small shed behind the house into his own research lab. No electric heating, but enough dreams to warm him through the winter. By 16, Elias had taught himself Python, C++, and assembly programming. Through library books and online forums he accessed secretly at night. The only teacher who recognized this was Mr. Benson, his high school math teacher. One late afternoon, when Mr. Benson happened to see Elias solving an entire set of nonlinear differential equations on the whiteboard, he didn't say anything for a long time. Then he gently said, "You don't belong here, Elias. You need a place that can push you to your limits." That was the first time anyone believed in him. Mr. Benson was the one who helped Elias apply for a full scholarship to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. And one spring morning, while debugging an AI code, Elias received an acceptance letter, along with a full scholarship from the Carnegie Foundation. He laid his head on the desk and cried, quietly, for a long time. At MIT, Elias learned so quickly that even the professors were amazed. But it was also there that he learned the most valuable lesson of his life. The world doesn't just need talent, it needs wisdom and caution. In his second year, Elias developed an algorithm that could analyze data from environmental sensors and predict natural disasters with unprecedented accuracy. His project was selected to be presented at an international conference in Tokyo, and it was here that he met Wren and Doyle Ventures, Swing, a venture capital firm with a seemingly perfect exterior, expensive suits, polished words, and promises of a world-changing future. They told Elias that he was special, that his project needed to be commercialized to save millions of lives. They offered him $100,000 to buy temporary usage rights and promised to invest millions more after practical testing. Elias signed. No lawyer, no guidance, just trust and a thirst to prove himself. 3 months later, they stopped contacting him. The project was rebranded, and Elias's technology appeared under the brand of another startup, where Elias had no name on the patent documents and didn't receive a single penny. He had been robbed, legally. The following period was a long, dark time. Elias almost dropped out. He worked at a laptop repair shop, lived on instant noodles, and avoided any conversations about the future. But it was at the moment when everything seemed to collapse that Elias found his core. He started again. Quietly, he rewrote the entire old algorithm, but improved it many times over. No partnerships with investors, no media attention. He spent 3 years building Reed Core, a small company located in a rented garage on the outskirts of Cambridge. At first, it was just Elias, then 2 engineers who believed in his vision. The 3 of them lived almost in poverty, working 18 hours a day, eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch, but believing they were building something great. And they were right. Elias Reed's new algorithm, later called Reed Core Sentinel, was tested by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security as an AI security solution. It could detect cybersecurity threats before they happened, using real-time behavioral prediction models. When Reed Core signed an $800 million contract with the government, Elias still wore his old shirt and entered the signing ceremony without any fanfare. A reporter asked, "Do you feel like you've gotten revenge on your past?" Elias just smiled lightly. "I don't seek revenge. I'm just on the right path." From that moment on, Reed Core grew in ways few could have expected. It became a technology contractor for over 12 government agencies, a technical partner for NATO and international organizations. The systems Elias designed now ran in every major airport in the U.S., from baggage control, passenger surveillance, to flight risk prediction. But what was truly impressive wasn't just the technology. It was how Elias kept to himself. He didn't appear on the cover of Forbes. He didn't flaunt his personal life in the media. He didn't have personal social media. In a world where everyone competed for attention, Elias Reed was a shadow, a man known to the world through technology, but never truly recognized. And that's why, when he was humiliated in the first-class lounge at Dulles Airport that day, no one recognized him, except for one young man, a person who once dreamed like Elias. a person who would later become the one to change the entire landscape. Because Elias's story was not just about pain, it was about how a man once rejected built an empire, not for revenge, but to prove that true power doesn't need to be proven. It is felt when justice happens. When Elias Reed boarded the plane to San Francisco, night had fallen outside the Boeing 787 Dreamliner window of Altura Airlines. Inside the first-class cabin, everything was unusually quiet. No one spoke. No one looked directly at him. But somewhere, phones had started passing around a blurry clip capturing the moment Elias was denied entry to the lounge. His figure in the gray suit being escorted like a criminal. A few hashtags started to emerge. Number sign boarding, while black number sign, Altura discriminates, number sign, Elias Reed. At a corner of the airport, Marcus Hill, Altura's young intern, was still glued to his phone screen, texting Theo Carter, his best friend and the software maintenance engineer in the internal IT department. Marcus. They just pulled Elias Reed out of the lounge. Theo. Wait. The Elias Reed? Reed Corps? Marcus. Yup. They thought his ticket was fake. Theo. Holy. Okay, this just got serious. It wasn't just a conversation between two young people. It was the first spark of an underground storm beginning to blow through the internal system of Altura Airlines. On the 16th floor of Reed Corps in San Francisco, Mira Donnell, the chief operating officer and head of the technology security team, was sitting in the central operations room, her eyes fixed on 3 data screens at once. When she received a call from Elias, only one command was spoken. Protocol Raven. Begin observation. No one outside of the organization knew what Protocol Raven meant, but Reed Corps' elite cybersecurity team was familiar with this signal like a battle song. It meant no counterattack, not yet public. Just observe and collect. Mira didn't need much time. Less than an hour after the signal was activated, she had already accessed the first logs from Altura's passenger management system. Using a signal disruption method that left no trace, her team created a shadow copy of the entire operational network, from the ticketing system, payment processing, to the airport's internal staff network. And then the errors began to appear. 9:12 a.m. at Midway Airport, Chicago. A passenger named Lindsay Moore approaches the check-in counter with a valid booking code, but is informed that her ticket has been duplicated with another passenger on the same flight. The scanner rejects it. The counter cannot process it. At the same time, at JFK Airport, New York, a group of first-class passengers complains about their tickets being downgraded to economy for no clear reason. On the system, the booking still shows the correct seat, but the seating allocation system has scrambled everything. A technician in Altura's control room scratches his head. This has never happened before. It's like someone is testing the system. At Reed Corps, Mira Donnell simply smiled. It started, she said, her eyes never leaving the log file showing an unusually high server response time. We haven't attacked yet. We're just looking in the mirror. And they've already seen the first reflection. In Altura's technical room, Theo Carter is disguising his activities by pretending to update software. But behind the encrypted VPN curtain, he's sending the first batch of sensitive data to Reed Corps. An internal report on the frequency of additional security checks targeting Black and Asian passengers. Data showing a 3-fold disparity compared to white passengers. Internal emails between senior management discussing suspicious passengers based on gut feelings. And especially a series of documents detailing the pressure on employees to change technical assessments to avoid fixing planes on time. Theo isn't a spy. He's just a young man who couldn't stand the stench of hypocrisy rising from the very place he worked. He sent one last message to Marcus, Bro, I'm doing the right thing. If I disappear, tell them I have no regrets. At Altura's CEO office, Douglas Crane is in an emergency meeting with the senior management team. On the large screen, the flight delay chart has spiked dramatically in the past 48 hours. What the hell is going on? Crane growls, throwing his pen down onto the table. We suspect an issue with the seat distribution slot mechanism, an IT manager responds, but we haven't identified the cause. No signs of a hack. Crane turns to Teresa Knoll, the PR director. And the PR side? What's going on with Elias Reed? Teresa swallows. There have been some articles defending him. The video is spreading fast, especially on tech channels. Crane closes his eyes, taking a deep breath. We need someone to handle this. That same day, at a mansion on the outskirts of Houston, a shiny black SUV pulls up in front of the gate. A man steps out, tall, silver at the temples, in a black suit, eyes as cold as steel. Lucian Voss, a crisis management expert who had covered up sex scandals for oil conglomerates and shifted media narratives to help a politician avoid money laundering charges. Lucian takes the call from Douglas Crane. Lucian, I need you. Lucian's voice is calm. Who are you up against? Elias Reed? Reed Corps? Lucian pauses for a few seconds, then simply says, send me all the files. I'll see how many ribs I can break. While Altura scrambles to extinguish small fires, Mira Donnell and Elias Reed are quietly spreading oil across the opponent's system. No one can see exactly what their hands are doing, but everyone feels the consequences. Delayed flights, frustrated passengers, payment errors, internal suspicions. And that's just the observation phase. The real attack hasn't even started yet. In his office at Reed Corps, Elias opened the dark wooden box and pulled out an old leather notebook. On the first page, there was a line he had written when he was 17 years old. If the system isn't for you, build a new one. He smiled and turned to the second page. The plan for this battle had been written years ago. It was just, now, it was time to execute. At the top floor of Reed Corps, a strategy operations room with no windows, no noise, only screens. Dozens of data lines were pouring in from across the international airport system, Altura Airlines' server chain, and hundreds of technical nodes that only Elias's tech security team fully understood the significance of each parameter. Mira stood in front of the main screen, the soft blue light casting on her calm yet tense face. She spoke quietly, as if reminding herself of every fluctuation. 10 transaction errors at gate 14, 6 cases of denied boarding even though tickets show valid. An ID check algorithm was just manually modified. This is no longer random, Mira continued, her eyes focused on a new report that appeared. They're hiding something. Something big. Elias Reed stood silently behind her, hands clasped in front of his chest. He didn't speak. No need to. Mira knew he understood what was beginning to surface from what appeared to be harmless surface data. At the same time, at Altura Airlines headquarters in Chicago, CEO Douglas Crane was sitting in his office, shirt unbuttoned, his hands trembling slightly as he dialed for an emergency meeting. Call legal, call tech, and contact Voss immediately. He slammed the phone down on the table, his face flushed. On the computer screen, the first reports from the IT department were coming up, each line flashing with warnings. It wasn't just a system error. Someone was deep inside, into internal files that he thought had been erased years ago. When Mira called in the security team, what they discovered wasn't an ordinary technical glitch. It was a graveyard that had been unearthed on the 12th floor of Reed Corps' headquarters. A team of data specialists worked tirelessly. They didn't need orders. Mira had trained them in the way Elias had taught. Find the truth, no matter how deeply buried it was. And the truth began to surface. Over 300 internal complaint files from Altura Airlines employees over the last 7 years, all concerning racial discrimination, harassment, threats, or retaliatory actions. Most were marked as handled internally with no specific actions taken. Some had been completely erased from the public system. One report from 2020 revealed that an Arab passenger was kicked off a flight for suspicious odor, despite passing security and being a platinum member. The staff member handling it at the time? Cheryl Knox. Another report from 2019. The technical department discovered a hairline crack on the landing gear of a Boeing 737, but instead of replacing it, management instructed to temporarily seal it with glue because it wasn't time for the next inspection. Mira stared at the screen. She knew she had to report to Elias, but not yet. There was still something she needed to be sure of. She shifted to Altura's old storage system, where internal email backups were periodically saved. And then she found a name, Lucien Voss. A secret consulting contract between Lucien and Altura stated that his mission was crisis containment and reputational risk mitigation. Lucien was paid $5 million per year, not through the payroll, but via a subsidiary based in the Cayman Islands. Mira frowned. Voss was no ordinary person. He was the expert in handling skeletons in the closet, literally in the business world. Lucien Voss entered Altura's headquarters at 3 a.m., wearing a long coat, carrying a leather briefcase. No one greeted him. They feared him, and they had good reason. "Start with social media," Voss ordered as he sat down in the emergency operations room. "Block all posts with the terms Elias Reed, Altura, discrimination." "And the system?" someone asked, worried. "Leave it to me, but if anything leaks, blame it on the technical operations side. Don't let the CEO get involved," he answered coldly. Douglas Crane entered, forcing a smile. "Lucien, I'm glad you're here." "Douglas, you don't need to act. We're not on a stage. I'm here to keep you alive. Don't stop me." At Reed Corps, Elias read through the summary that Mira had sent. His gaze was not angry, it was cold. "Mira, activate the independent press team. Download all the files. Store them on a distributed network. We're preparing for a data wave, but not yet releasing it." "Wait for what?" Mira asked. "Wait for Lucien to make his move," Elias replied, his eyes fixed on the darkness outside the glass window. "And wait for Marcus to send information from the inside." At Denver International Airport, one of Altura's major operational hubs, Marcus Hill was working the night shift. He had contacted Theo Carter, an IT technical employee who had been quietly monitoring Altura's system for some time. Theo had been a classmate of Elias at MIT and had also witnessed Elias being betrayed by those with money and power. "Something big is being erased from the system," Theo texted Marcus. "I'll send a snapshot before it disappears." A minute later, an email appeared on Reed Corps' backup server. It was a detailed transfer sheet from Altura's auxiliary account to 4 offshore companies, with one suspicious item: foreign affairs funding, hidden government project. Elias looked over the data Marcus sent, his expression calm. He lightly touched his wrist, a gift from his late foster mother, who once said, "Justice requires intellect, not hatred." Then he turned to Mira. "Start creating the internal document chain. Publish a part every day, not to attack, but to let people see, one truth at a time." Mira nodded. "And Lucien?" Elias smiled slightly. "Voss will act first, and that's when we end the prologue." As the first light of dawn broke over the Chicago sky, Altura Airlines' headquarters was in chaos. Control screens were flashing red with warnings. The IT system had completely collapsed. Douglas Crane, CEO of Altura, stood in the operations room, beads of sweat on his forehead. He turned to Lucien Voss, the crisis management expert just hired. "Lucien, what the hell is going on?" Lucien, with a cold expression, replied, "Your system has been breached deeper than we thought. This is not just a technical glitch." Meanwhile, on social media, the video of Elias Reed being denied entry to the first-class lounge was spreading rapidly. The online community was outraged, with hashtags like "Short of Altura Discriminates" and "Justice for Elias" Sharkar flooding everywhere. At another corner of Altura's headquarters, employees began to split. Some still remained loyal to the company, thinking it was just a misunderstanding. But many others, especially those who had experienced or witnessed discriminatory behavior, could no longer stay silent. Erica Johnson, a senior employee in the customer service department, stood up in the middle of a departmental meeting. She looked directly at her manager, Cheryl Knox. "Cheryl, I can't keep ignoring what's going on. How many complaints about discrimination have we received that you asked me to handle internally and not report up the chain?" Cheryl, pale-faced, stammered, "Erica, this isn't the time to—" Erica interrupted. "No, Cheryl. This is the time. We have to take responsibility for our actions." Silence filled the room. A few employees nodded in agreement, while others avoided Erica's gaze. At Reed Corps headquarters, Elias Reed and Mira Donnell were watching the developments. Mira turned to Elias. "We've stirred up something bigger than we expected. This is no longer just about Altura, but about how this entire industry treats people." Elias nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Exactly. And we won't stop until justice is served." Mira Okoro stared at the large screen covered in swirling data. Lines of code, logs from Altura's system, were appearing like a map of guilt. Beside her, Victor Grant, who had just officially resigned after a company internal investigation that lasted for weeks, handed her a USB drive. "This is all the logs from the past 2 years," he said, his voice low. "Internal emails, cameras, hidden storage systems. You'll want to see this first." At Reed Corps, Elias had read through the summary that Mira sent. His gaze was not angry. It was cold. "Mira, activate the independent press team, download all the files, store them on a distributed network. We're preparing for a data wave, but not yet releasing it." "Wait for what?" Mira asked. "Wait for Lucian to reveal himself," Elias replied, his eyes staring into the darkness outside the glass window. "And wait for Marcus to send information from the inside." At Denver International Airport, one of Altura's main operational hubs, Marcus Hill was working the night shift. He had been in contact with Theo Carter, an IT technical staff member who had quietly been monitoring Altura's system for some time. Theo had been a classmate of Elias at MIT and had also witnessed Elias being betrayed by those with money and power. "Something big is being erased from the system," Theo texted Marcus. "I'll send a snapshot before it disappears." A minute later, an email appeared on Reed Corps' backup server. It was a detailed transfer sheet from Altura's auxiliary account to 4 offshore companies, with one suspicious item: foreign affairs funding, hidden government project. Elias looked over the data that Marcus had sent, his expression still. He lightly touched his wrist, a gift from his late foster mother, who once said, "Justice requires intellect, not hatred." He then turned to Mira. "Start creating the internal document chain. Publish a part every day, not to attack, but to let people see, one truth at a time." Mira nodded. "And Lucian," Elias smiled faintly, "Voss will act first, and that's when we end the prologue." As the first light of dawn broke over the Chicago sky, Altura Airlines' headquarters was in chaos. Control screens were flashing red with warnings. The IT system had completely collapsed. Douglas Crane, CEO of Altura, stood in the operations room, beads of sweat on his forehead. He turned to Lucian Voss, the crisis management expert just hired. "Lucian, what the hell is going on?" Lucian, with a cold expression, replied, "Your system has been breached deeper than we thought. This is not just a technical glitch." Meanwhile, on social media, the video of Elias Reed being denied entry to the first-class lounge was spreading rapidly. The online community was outraged, with hashtags like "Shakir Altura discriminates" and "Justice for Elias" flooding everywhere. At another corner of Altura's headquarters, employees began to split. Some still remained loyal to the company, thinking it was just a misunderstanding. But many others, especially those who had experienced or witnessed discriminatory behavior, could no longer stay silent. Erica Johnson, a senior employee in the customer service department, stood up in the middle of a departmental meeting. She looked directly at her manager, Cheryl Knox. Cheryl, I can't keep ignoring what's going on. How many complaints about discrimination have we received that you asked me to handle internally and not report up the chain? Cheryl, pale-faced, stammered. Erica, this isn't the time to... Erica interrupted. No, Cheryl. This is the time. We have to take responsibility for our actions. Silence filled the room. A few employees nodded in agreement, while others avoided Erica's gaze. At Reed Corps headquarters, Elias Reed and Mira Donnell were watching the developments. Mira turned to Elias. We've stirred up something bigger than we expected. This is no longer just about Altura, but about how this entire industry treats people. Elias nodded, his gaze unwavering. Exactly. And we won't stop until justice is served. Mira Okoro stared at the large screen covered in swirling data. Lines of code, logs from Altura's system, were appearing like a map of guilt. Beside her, Victor Grant, who had just officially resigned after a company internal investigation that lasted for weeks, handed her a USB drive. This is all the logs from the past 2 years, he said, his voice low. Internal emails, cameras, hidden storage systems. You'll want to see this first. At Altura, in a final effort, they hired an underground media company to create a black dossier on Elias, accusing him of conspiring with a politician to manipulate a government AI contract. That evening, Leah Okoro, Reed Corps' chief security officer, held a brief press conference. On the large screen were 10 years of independent financial reports, tax payment records, and public contracts with the government. If there is any evidence to support these accusations, we are prepared to withdraw from the entire industry, Leah said, her voice sharp as a knife. If not, let those who fabricate lies be held accountable by the law. The next morning, when Helen called Elias, her voice was trembling. I'm ready to stand with you. But are you ready to step in? On the other end of the line, Elias simply replied, it's time for the system to fix itself or be replaced. The faint light from Douglas Crane's office window cast onto his face, creating a tense and silent atmosphere. In this moment, it seemed the entire world of Altura was in the hands of one person, Elias Reed. He stood there, unhurried, with no sign of stress, his gaze cold but full of determination. Douglas Crane, CEO of Altura Airways, sat across from him, his eyes desperately trying not to show fear, even as everything slipped beyond his control. Since the video of Elias being kicked out of the lounge had gone viral, his company had been eroding little by little. Now in this room, there was only one question left. Who would leave and who would seize the final power? Elias didn't speak right away. He simply sat down, serious and composed, as if he were entering a normal meeting. But all Douglas Crane needed to understand was that nothing was normal about this meeting. This was a pivotal meeting for the future of Altura and Reed Corps. Douglas, Elias spoke, his voice deep and cold. I don't want to prolong this issue any further. Everything is already clear. Douglas looked into Elias's eyes, struggling to maintain his composure, but unable to hide the trembling in his voice. I don't understand, Elias. We've done everything we could. This is just a personal incident. You can't start an all-out war over something as small as this. Elias shook his head. It's not a personal incident, Douglas. This is a system problem, a system that has trampled on people's rights. I have enough evidence. Everything you've done has been recorded. Elias's hand gently placed a thick file on the table with a light thud. He continued, unhurried. This is all the evidence of Altura's financial misconduct. These are copies of emails from you and your associates, hidden reports, fake payments. These are irrefutable pieces of evidence. Douglas sighed, his hands gripping the edge of the table, his eyes filled with worry. What do you think you'll do with all this, Elias? You can't defeat Altura. I don't believe in your so-called justice. This is a big game, and I have enough people and money to protect myself. Elias continued to look at Douglas with unwavering eyes, as if he had already seen everything. I don't need to protect myself, Douglas. I just need the truth. And this is the truth. Altura built its empire on lies and manipulation. I won't let that continue. A minute of silence lingered in the air, heavy, as if all the decisions in this meeting had already been made long ago. Douglas Crane stood up, extending his hand as if trying to hide part of his failure. You can't do this, Douglas said, his voice low and heavy. If you release everything, Altura will collapse. I won't let that happen. I will fight. I will protect this company to the end. Elias didn't respond. He simply smiled faintly, a smile with no joy, only certainty. Douglas, I don't want to fight you. I just want justice. And this is the moment Altura must pay. Just then, hurried footsteps echoed from the hallway. A group of FBI agents entered the meeting room, their faces serious. It's over, one agent said, holding a file. Douglas Crane froze, unable to believe what was happening. What are you doing here? I haven't agreed to any arrest warrant. Elias remained silent, unmoving. He looked at Douglas without an ounce of pity. This is the price to pay for greed, Douglas. As the FBI agents moved closer, Douglas Crane stood up, hurriedly trying to resist, but there was nothing left to defend. All the evidence was in their hands, and it could no longer be undone. They cuffed Douglas and led him out of the room. At the same time, in a hidden corner of Altura's headquarters, the board of directors was having an emergency meeting. The room was quiet, with only the noisy discussions of the members as they faced the most important decision in the company's history. Helen Voss, the COO, who had emerged as a rising star in this crisis, looked directly into the eyes of the board members. She showed no hesitation, delivering her arguments forcefully. Altura didn't end up in this situation because of any one individual. This is a system failure of a system that could not change, that could not deliver fairness. And I will not let it destroy everything we've built. One board member spoke up. So what do we do now, Helen? Do we have any chance to save Altura? Helen didn't answer immediately, but quietly looked at the financial reports, where shady payments and illegal transactions were clearly displayed on the screen. We can't save Altura if we continue to protect the people who created this decay, and that's why I'm making the proposal. Sell Altura to Reedcore Technologies. A silence filled the room. All eyes turned toward Helen Voss. This was not an easy decision, but it was clearly the only option left. We have no other choice. Altura has become a burden, Helen continued, and without innovation, without someone who can step up and bring real change, Altura will never recover. The board remained silent, but then a few members began nodding. She had convinced them. From here on, a new chapter for Altura was beginning, and the leader would no longer be someone as greedy as Douglas Crane. An hour after the meeting, Helen Voss walked into Elias Reed's office. A decision had been made. A short call, a key question, and everything was set. Altura Airlines would officially belong to Reedcore. They looked at each other, needing no further words. They had done the right thing. We won't let them re-establish any system like this again, Helen said, her hand gripping the documents tightly. Altura will be reborn under a new name. Elias smiled faintly. Yes, this is the beginning of a new era, and this time, we won't give up. The meeting between Elias and the board of directors yielded a clear result. Altura would officially be handed over to Reedcore Technologies, and as soon as the final adjustments were made, a significant turning point in the aviation industry would be set in motion, with Reedcore's commitment to innovation, fairness, and a more advanced security system than ever before. But for Elias Reed, this battle had only just begun. The first light of dawn streamed through the large glass doors of the new headquarters building. Elias Reed stood by the window, his eyes gazing out at the city, where everything was changing in ways he had never imagined before. His long journey from an orphan child to a leader of the largest technology corporation in the industry had ended. Or rather, A new phase had just begun, and now he was seeing the first fruits of innovation. New Altura, the new name for the once renowned airline, was no longer a symbol of racism and power manipulation. This name now represented a new era, one where justice and respect for humanity were the guiding principles. When Elias announced the decision to rename Altura to New Altura, it wasn't just the rebirth of a corporation, but a commitment to the values he had fought for all these years. Months after the power transfer was completed, Marcus Hill, who had always stood behind Elias with absolute loyalty, officially became the director of training at New Altura. Not only did he have strong leadership skills, but he also understood the importance of developing talent from within the company. Marcus stood in a large conference room where directors and department heads were discussing training programs for new employees. He looked at the board, where detailed plans for training, skill development, and particularly the focus on professional ethics were clearly outlined. We are not just building an excellent team of experts, we also need to nurture a generation of leaders who respect justice and human dignity, Marcus said, waving his pen in the air to emphasize a key point in his presentation. Marcus's training program would not just be typical lessons, but a revolution in leadership training. He wanted young people to be not only competent employees, but also responsible citizens with strong ethics in their work. For Marcus, this was his way of helping to change the aviation industry and shape the future of New Altura. At the same time, Erica Voss, who had once been one of Altura's key employees and stood up against the injustices within the company, was now leading the Ethics and Customer Experience Department at New Altura. She held a strong belief that the company should not only provide excellent services, but also truly listen to and respect its customers, especially those who had been treated unfairly. We don't just sell flight tickets, we sell respect. We sell trust and peace of mind, Erica shared in an important meeting with customer service department heads. Every passenger boarding our planes must feel that they are welcomed, regardless of their race, gender, or background. Erica began to build a completely new customer service strategy, from improving the complaint response process to developing a more professional staff than ever before, thoroughly trained on how to treat every passenger fairly and with respect. Mira Okoro, COO of Reed Corp. Meanwhile, Mira Okoro, the woman who had once been the brain behind Reed Corp's technology security system, had now been promoted to Chief Operating Officer, COO of the company. Mira, with her keen sense for spotting opportunities and challenges, had become Elias's right-hand person in running the company. Not only was she skilled in technology, but she also had a strategic vision, understanding the importance of building a company that was not only financially strong, but also solid in ethics and values. In her early days as COO, Mira focused on resetting Reed Corp's workflow, optimizing every department from research and development, R&D to marketing and partnerships. She wanted Reed Corp to not only be a leading technology company, but also a pioneer in applying the values of fairness and respect to every business decision. Although busy with the operations of Reed Corp and New Altura, Elias never forgot the difficult years of his childhood. He knew that to make a real difference, he needed to invest in the next generation. Children with potential, but lacking opportunities. Therefore, he decided to return to his old school, where he had once struggled to prove his worth. There, Elias launched a scholarship fund and technology center for underprivileged students, especially those from disadvantaged communities. This center would not only provide scholarships for outstanding students, but also offer training in technology skills, helping them rise in the modern world. We cannot change the past, but we can change the future. And I want that future to start with the young generations here, Elias said in the opening ceremony of the center. We can help, support, and create opportunities for those who have never had the chance. This is how I give back to the community that raised me. Elias's scholarship fund quickly became a symbol of hope, providing educational and career development opportunities for thousands of students. The Technology Center also became a breeding ground for young talents, with creative and innovative startup projects emerging. New Altura's first flight. Everyone deserves respect. Finally, the significant day arrived. The first flight of New Altura. A flight carrying ambition, trust, and hope. The new planes, brightly colored and bearing the symbol of rebirth, were ready to take off. This was not just a regular flight. It was a flight carrying the mission of a company that aimed to change society's perception of fairness and respect. Elias stood at the airport, looking up at the new Altura planes, his eyes gleaming with pride. He knew this was the most important step in his journey, not just to build a successful company, but to create a major change in the aviation industry and society. The first flight took off, and New Altura's message was powerfully delivered to all the passengers. Everyone deserves respect. Passengers, from the elderly to children, families, and individuals, all felt that they were not only welcomed, but also respected throughout the flight. Elias stood by the door, watching the passengers board the plane with smiles and confident eyes. This was the innovation he had been building, and for him, this was the legacy he wanted to leave. A legacy of justice, fairness, and respect. With New Altura's first flight, Elias Reed's journey was far from over. He knew there was still much work to be done, and the challenges ahead would never be easy. But with his team, with talented and passionate individuals, Elias believed that everything could change. Elias Reed's legacy wasn't just about a huge company. It was about the profound change in how large corporations should treat people. Justice was not just a slogan, but an action.